Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Richie Halverson with a dose of hope for you for your Friday. In John 11, Jesus returns to Bethany to wake his friend Lazarus up from the dead. And I found it interesting that Bethany means the house of the afflicted, and Lazarus means God helps. You need to know today, God helps the house of the afflicted. If you're hurting, God is going to help. And we see that in this scene in John 11. We see Jesus in the most emotionally transparent state in the whole Bible. When Jesus gets to the graveside of his friend, it just says Jesus wept. Often this scene is portrayed with Jesus, in the pictures as having this halo over his head and this little calm look with a little singular tear coming down his eye. But we know grief is not like that. That's not real life. Well, the good news is that's not the description the Bible gives either. In John 11:33, when Jesus sees all the weeping, the Bible says that he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. Now that sounds nice and pleasant, but the word for deeply moved means to be angry. Jesus is not shedding just a few tears. According to the Greek, he's in such deep anguish that he's shaking with rage. Anger is number 2 stage in the 5 stages of grief. So have you ever been angry at death? Have you ever lost someone and been angry about it? Jesus is right there with you. But what I find interesting is that Jesus knew what he was going to do, and yet he still weeps. I mean, I don't know. If I had that power to wake someone up, I just feel like I wouldn't weep. I'd be like, I know what I'm going to do in a few minutes. And so I'm just going to walk right past the weeping. But Jesus doesn't do that. Why? Well, I believe verse 25 tells us why. In verse 25, Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Basically, I am the source of life. At the beginning of John's gospel, John has already established in John 1, 3, and 4, all things were made through Christ. Without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life. Jesus is life. Basically, Jesus is creator. So I believe the only logical answer as to why Jesus is angry and raging against death is because he is life, and he knows that death doesn't belong. I believe that in the tears of Mary, Martha, and the mourners, Jesus saw and felt the tears of every parent who's ever lost a child, of every spouse who's ever had to bury their lifelong partner, of every son and daughter who's had to watch their parents wither away. Isaiah 53:3 calls Jesus a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. In fact, in verse 4, it says that he carries our grief and sorrows. God is not distant in your pain. He's weeping right next to you. And that's why for the house of the afflicted, God helps, because he identifies with your pain. But this goes even deeper. When Jesus first gets to the graveside, he asks Mary, where have you laid him? 1 week later, the roles are reversed. And in John 20:13, Mary asks Jesus, they have taken away my master. I don't know where they have laid them. And she asked the same thing, where have you laid him? When Jesus asks, where have you laid him? They say, come and see. When Mary asks, where have you laid him? At first, she can't see because of the weeping. She thinks Jesus is a gardener until he says her name, Mary. Friends, you need to know today, a new day is dawning. And although right now the night is very dark and the tears are very bitter, and we're still angry at death, the resurrection is a promise that light and life is coming. At the very end of this chapter, John 11:53 says, from that day on, the religious leaders made plans to put Jesus to death. Do you realize what this means? It means that Jesus knew that the only way to bring Lazarus out of the tomb was if he was to go into the tomb. That the only way he could bring his best friend out of the grave meant he would have to go into the grave. That the only way one day Jesus will be able to wipe away all of our tears is if he entered into the tears of our loss, loneliness, and death. You know, growing up, I always heard that John 11:35, Jesus wept, was the shortest verse in the Bible. Well, I found out recently, yes and no. It's one of the shortest verses in the Bible, but it's not the only shortest verse in the Bible. There is another one, just 2 words long. 1 Thessalonians 5:16, rejoice always. So check it out. Jesus wept so that one day soon we can rejoice always. This is why God helps the house of the afflicted. Weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Hold on to that hope today and every day. May God bless you and keep you.